So bringing the attention to the here and now, just observe, the state of mind you're in. Just, not to criticize it, but just recognize it's like this. There's that sign over there, it's like this. And so it reminds just to, so that you're establishing this here and now practice, because when we can't like say oh water, then we kind of expect something, or maybe we have a reaction to just the idea of having something, having a meeting, or water, whatever, how these words affect you, whether they inspire you or you feel rebellious or indifferent. It's up to you to know that it's like this. And so you're establishing this awareness around the way it is, not, so it's not, not a critical. There's no, you should feel a certain way, that you should, appreciate this, and or you shouldn't complain about it, or you should pay attention, or whatever, because these are the shoulds of life about how things, we can always imagine how life should be. But to really be aware of how it really is at this moment is like this. And so we can, one can be easily intimidated in monastic life through all the shoulds about, the contentment, gratitude, surrender, all these terms we have, are they're directions rather than commands. You can't command or order somebody to be grateful or contented, or to agree with everything or like everything, or you can't just order them to surrender. And anyone, they can't really do, you can say surrender, but whether somebody actually can do it or not, something else. So that's up to so this is like the reflective practice, to be aware of how things, like do the Vinaya, how the rules of the Vinaya affect you, or the lifestyle in the monastery, the head monk, or the other monks or lay people, is like to be aware of it. It's like this at this moment, because of course it changes. We feel differently at different times. But the point of this reflection is to encourage this observing reflectiveness that is really Buddho, really awakened attention to the way it is. And again, I emphasize, it's not critical, not saying if you're feeling in a terrible mood and full of anger and resentment that you shouldn't feel like that, because if that's what you're feeling at this present moment, that's maybe not even the way you want to feel, but that the conditions in your karma have arisen to where this is what you're feeling. So the important thing is to be aware of it. And in this way, then you're seeing it as as it really is in the present. You're feeling it, you're knowing it. It's like this. So like anger, for example, you know when you feel angry, don't you? I mean, we all know when I have this mood, angry mood, I know, I say, well, I'm angry, I feel angry. So there's a kind of knowing of it. It's a mood, it's very strong. Anger is one of the strong emotions. But then, even though you know you're feeling angry, you're interpreting it always from, a very personal way. It's my anger, or we blame it on somebody else or something else. So even though we know there's anger, we claim it as it's caused by somebody, it's mine, and maybe we don't want to try to get rid of it, or we completely kind of get lost in it and proliferate on the angry energy. But the middle way, the Majjhima Patipatthana, is the knower of it. It's like this. Now apply that to, anger is easy to see. Sexual lust is easy to observe. You know when that kind of energy is present. So greed, lopa and dosa are quite easy to, because they're strong energies. But so much of our life is spent around the moha level of just feeling indifferent or bored or, slightly anxious or worried. Mild types of emotions, which, are easy to just not notice because they aren't important enough, they aren't strong enough to be aware of. But in this lopa dosa moha sequence, greed, hatred, and delusion, these are these are categories of different emotional reactions we have in this realm as a human being. And then, of course, anger can be, just being kind of just annoyed or irritated to, murderous rage from the total commitment to violent act, or just being, fed up and irritated with something or somebody or even yourself. And then greed, of course, is different levels of, it's not always sexual desire, but it's all, wanting sensual pleasures. And then we live a life of renunciation. So we can feel that we shouldn't want sensual pleasures and then try to, judge ourselves according to, try to stop this sensual pleasure experience. But also it's knowing it for what it is, this attraction to pleasure through seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. It's like this. So when Vedananusati on Vedana, you're aware of the pull of what is attractive and pleasing on the sensual level, and then what is repulsive, what is you don't like, don't want. So like super practices and things like that is kind of deliberate willingness to observe feelings of aversion and repulsion toward sense experiences. This and then the moha level is, I found, just being kind of confused, the general emotional confusion or indifference or kind of levels of boredom or mild forms of negativity that can, so much of one's life tend to be ignored, or in a busy life, in an ordinary life, there's so many distractions. When you get bored or unhappy or whatever, then you can distract yourself through sensual indulgence or sexual fantasy or television, telephone, or whatever. There's so many possible interesting distractions now, internet, and there must be, fantastic variety of entertaining, interesting distractions just at the touch of a finger on a keyboard. And there, you may be worried or kind of bored, and then you don't bother to notice. The habit is to seek something that's interesting or distracting from a kind of dreary. So much of life can be rather dreary. It's neither exciting or interesting or horrible or miserable, but it's just wearisome and boring and dreary. So much of modern life is to snap out of that by finding something exciting, interesting, and pleasing. Why do people go to horror movies? Why do people? Horror movies are very popular nowadays. They seem to be obsessed with vampire movies. So I think, why is this sudden kind of fashion and fascination for vampires? And when they make these vampire movies, they're very, they're money makers. And of course, vampires are, being scared is exciting, isn't it? Being frightened out of your wits, and kind of gore and blood and war. Sex and violence excite the human mind. Football, why is the world obsession with football? Because it's exciting. You see these two teams kicking a ball around the field. And then people get very excited and they really get passionate. Really passionate over, Manchester United or something. And so it's what is it in why do we do that? Seeing men kicking the ball around. What except that it takes us out of the realm of boredom and maybe the dreariness of our life, the weariness of existing and the unpleasant job we have, or maybe we don't get along with the wife or something, and so you can find distraction through these exciting events. And wars are always exciting, isn't it? Fighting and boxing and so it's like contemplating excitement. What is exciting and romantic images, it's a different kind of emotion, and adventures, romance, adventure, excitement. But when you really look at anyone's life, ours or lay people or anyone, it's really the moments of great romance, adventure, excitement are rare. Most of it's like this, just sleepiness, boredom, indifference, dreary feelings, just routine life. Getting up in the morning, putting on your clothes, going to your job, waiting for the bus. That's what most of life is really about, isn't it? That's, when you look at most of the moments of anyone's life, it's just that kind of experience, the ordinary routine. But in monastic life, we want to, it is a boring lifestyle, so it's deliberately constructed because in this way we have to pay attention to what we're feeling. It's encouraging. It's like this. What I'm trying to do now is kind of encourage you to look at the way you're feeling. If it's dreary or bored or disillusioned or critical or whatever. It's to be the knower the way it is. It's like this. And then it's so easy to make a judgment, like, to think that it's wrong the way we're feeling, or it's not good enough, or we've got to do something about it. But this is where it's a real act of trust or faith in this awareness to be just, it's like this, and just, this kind of patient allowance of it to be what it is in the present, without jumping in trying to change it, criticize it, or blame it on somebody. There's also another way of just listening to it. So my background is we tend to complain about things. Every life that you're brought up to complain. And then I was in the Navy for 4 years, and there was 4 years of relentless, unmitigated complaining. So in the Navy, and even when everything was okay, people still complained. And then of course in the military, there's always, it's not a particular lifestyle that you can love totally. There's a lot to complain about, but even when there isn't, the habit of complaining, grumbling, it becomes addictive. So even when life is going quite well, then there's still a tendency to complain about it in some way or another. So, because this was such a strong habit, when I first came to live with Luang Por Chah, the complaining mind would take over. And why do they have to do it like this? Grumble. And fortunately, nobody could speak English, and I couldn't speak the language, so I didn't complain to others. And when I did, then I'd get called in front of Ajahn Chah. But but I was grumbling internally. I started listening to this kind of, and I realized it was just a habit of grumbling, and so it just went on, because habits are like that, you just develop these habits, and then they kind of take you over, and they come up, no matter what, because that's what habits do. So, then the ideal bhikkhu image was one who's content and grateful, not one who complains. So then trying to make myself content through an act of will, couldn't do that either. Couldn't just pretend I'm contented. Or I'd feel I should be, and then feel worthless, that I'm not very good bhikkhu because I'm not content or grateful. I just grumble and complain. Or then this Buddho practice of listening, paying attention to it, to discontentment. Listen to discontentment, rather than trying to just get rid of it or go along with it or feel guilty about it. Listen to grumbling, internal grumbling, complaining, whinging that goes on is like this. And then you begin to get this sense of this which is aware of the aramana, or the object. This is aware. This is intelligent awareness. This is pure. This is refuge. And the object then is seen, rather in terms of personalizing it and judging it, but seeing that in terms of all sankharas are impermanent and non-self. So it's a continuous determination to use just the conditions of the present moment for this developing this practice, integrating it into your life, because it is not necessary to have everything, to be sitting for a long period of time, but it's so much of, life is about walking and standing and washing your bowl, putting on your robes, going on alms rounds, walking back to kuti, washing the robes, and the daily routine of a monk, in which we can listen. We use everything, the here and now Dhamma as a way of listening to the way it is. And then this discerning ability, that which is aware of the way it is, of the condition that is operating now, is that which is aware of that condition is not a condition. It doesn't complain. It doesn't criticize, but it certainly discerns it. Because it's like anger, there's anger. Discerns it, recognizes anger. And so that is like mindfulness, that's Buddho, Dhammo, Sangho, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. So it's Buddha that knows Dhamma. So we take refuge in Buddha rather than in our own particular views and opinions and personal habits. Knowing Dhamma then is knowing, or not through attachment to the idea of all conditions are impermanent, but by observing impermanence, being the knower of impermanence, not someone who attaches to the idea of impermanence. Because we tend to do that easily. You see that a lot. Everything's impermanent, so everything ceases, and then we think we've got it all down, and it's just we're just quoting from the text or what our own opinion, and it's right, and everything is impermanent. But the point is the grasping of the words. To see, it's not about grasping the idea of impermanence, but observing this direct, insightful knowing of impermanence means that you actually can be aware of everything, of the good qualities, the bad ones, the boring ones, the exciting ones, the dreary ones. They're all grist for the mill. It's all past knowledge by seeing, by knowing them as they really are. And then, in my own practice, I reached a point where, really, this powerful sense of knowing, and then, but still the habit tendencies would operate. And there was a kind of hoping that more mindful I was, all these irritating habits I have would disappear. So there was also, a wish to get rid of them, or not, this kind of wanting not to have bad habits, irritating habits, is another object in consciousness, not wanting and hoping that by practicing like this they'll go away. So, then this continuous reminder of there's only the here and now, there's no past or future. The illusion of a past and the illusion of future is arising in the present. So you can, you observe how you're looking forward to something in the future, or this idea of the future is beginning to become an object in the present moment rather than just taken for granted and operating with always living now and doing something to get something you desire in the future. So anatta then is, when there's pure awareness, there's no self. You can't claim, my personality can't claim anything. I mean, it can claim all kinds of things. I don't believe it. The personality is never going to get enlightened. So, when you think, you go around judging Kuba Ajahn, who's enlightened and who isn't, because maybe you don't like their personalities. So you think he couldn't be enlightened, he's got a rotten personality. But it really, the personality, it doesn't get enlightened. So we all have to, we manifest through, these personalities that we do have. But so each Kuba Ajahn, every monk has it's different. They're not, you don't get an arahant personality, where they're just a state of bliss and saintly all the time. But, we can imagine an arahant personality, but, that doesn't make sense, because its personality is a condition. It's karma. And then we relate, like Ajahn Chah had a very kind of charming personality, and ebullient, and kind of outgoing, and radiant. And then Lumpur Liam is very different, he doesn't even look at you most of the time. But different personality, and then people judge, they used to compare Lumpur Liam with Ajahn Chah. Oh, he's not like Ajahn Chah. And because they had this idea that to be enlightened you had to be like Ajahn Chah. And then there's Lung Tapu, it's a very different personality, and all these others. So, the conceit of, because I like this monk and I don't like that one, that I'm the judge of their insight is a really, really look at it, it's a very conceited position to take. That I know who's enlightened and who isn't. When you look at that in yourself, you don't. It sounds awful when you hear yourself thinking like that. And then the Oputo practice is that the personality then doesn't mean you don't have any personality, but you're no longer operating from that illusion. It's no longer when we're unenlightened, when we're not aware, then we operate on a very personal level with everything. Everything's personalized, and of course we have to live our lives in this form for a lifetime, with this body and these habits that one has acquired, conditioned. And each one of us has different karmic tendencies, different problems, different emotional hang-ups and tendencies and hopes and expectations, fears and that. So that on that level there's very little possible chance of us all becoming exactly, one kind of ideal monk. But that's the point of the Vinaya, is that it's not about trying to become a good monk through keeping rules and being celibate, but it's about an agreement on how to live with each other, so we can have this occasion to observe the vipaka karma that we're experiencing in the present. It's like this. Now, in your lives also, you're going to have to go through all kinds of successes and failures, and that's just a part of life. So in monastic life doesn't get you out of that. But it does give you, it does help you to observe praise and blame, success and failure, and good health and bad health, and happiness and suffering. So it's not to be, we're not to grasp these conventions in some kind of personal way, but to use them for mindfulness, reflection, and then to the way we can actually live together as Sangha, because Sangha always implies a group, doesn't it? It's not an individual, it's not a hermit. You don't take refuge in a hermetic lifestyle. The third refuge is always Sangha, which implies a group of people. So then, we have to live with each other, and then we react to each other emotionally and that. But then the point of it all is that we're observing that, being the knower of the world rather than the worldly person trying to make the world fit an ideal that might be very beautiful, but would be an impossibility. I can imagine a world that is extremely beautiful, but that's not the way life has ever been. I could imagine perfect monasteries. And so, how I'd like a monastery to be, a really perfect Thai forest tradition monastery. I can imagine it, but I've never been able to make it manifest. So this is where it's whatever monastery you go to, you're going to find something irritating, frustrating, or unpleasant about it, and some things you like, some things you don't like. But the issue is really being aware of that. And after my first pansa with Luang Por Chah at Wat Pa Pong, I didn't particularly like living in the community. So I finally got permission to go off Tudong, because I had this idea of wanting to live like a hermit. At first Ajahn Chah wouldn't let me go, and then I thought he's just trying to hang on to me, just trying to control me, he's trying to control me. Power, he's after power. He wants to keep this Prapvarang as a power symbol, that I've got control over this big, clumsy American bloke. Luang Por Chah never said that. And that's how the mind can work, And then finally, he did give in and let me go. And it was very amusing because obviously he didn't want me to go, but he did it very graciously. And then the day I was to leave, I was going to go up to Nong Khai, where I ordained, and then to Sukul Nakorn province, where I had this place all set up in the Pupan range, Pupek mountain. And so, anyway, Ajahn Chah took me to the Warin train station, along with a whole truckload of other monks from Wat Pa Pong, and they put me on the train, and then Luang Por Chah said, come back for the pansa, and I said, I didn't commit myself, and so I had this vision as we were pulling out of the Warin train station. I was there, and there Luang Por Chah was standing, and all the monks, and they were going like this, smiling at me. So I had that last image of leaving Warin with these wonderful monks waving goodbye, or in the monastic way. And so then I went to Pupek mountain for 6 months, and I was expecting, bliss and happiness, and it was quite a beautiful place, and then there were 2 Thai monks with me on top of this mountain. It's the highest peak in the Pupan mountain range. It goes across Sukarnakorn, and it used to be a Khmer Angkor Wat period type Chedi or something. The ruins of it are still there. So I was there, and the Bindabat was very arduous. You had to leave at dawn and go down this mountain, which was quite a distance, and wait at this reservoir in a little tin hut for the villagers to come, and they'd bring food and put it on bowls. Then we'd have to climb back up the mountain. So we'd get there just in time to eat the meal before noon. And so from dawn until, about 11:30, you were just going bindabat and waiting for this food, and then to climb back up, and then somebody put a sign halfway up this mountain. Somebody put a sign in English saying, "To do good is the same as climbing this mountain." And this was about halfway up the mountain, and that's true. Really, halfway up you're pretty tired, and you haven't had anything to eat yet. Do good is the same as climbing this mountain. It's true. Do good does take a little more effort than just to not bother doing anything. So. Anyway, during that time, everything horrible that you can imagine happened to me. I was arrested by the police, and taken into the district, because they thought I was a communist. And then, and we had a terrible storm that nearly blew my kuti off the cliff. And the kitchen, which was across from my kuti, that kitchen was blown right into my kuti. Wild, like almost whirlwind. And then I became obsessed with aversion towards one of these Thai monks. And not that he ever did anything to deserve it, it just became totally obsessed and I couldn't get rid of this hatred for this monk. And fortunately, he would come and go. He wasn't there all the time. But I was expecting peace and happiness. Instead, I was just fulminating with this stupid emotion. Because he hadn't done anything. Where did it come from? Except that somehow anger and resentment was kind of fixed on this one monk. And then I got very sick. I had terrible fever, and they had to take me down. The village men came up, had to carry me down this mountain to this tin shelter, but in the hot season. And I was so miserable. I couldn't, just couldn't eat, and the food was very kind of really coarse, bun type food. And then this little shed, it was hot season, the sun would come blazing down on this tin roof, and I'd be laying there, totally, feeling terribly sorry for myself, and all these insects crawling in all, the eyes and the ears, and these little, what is it called? What? And so, and then I'd hear airplane flying overhead, and I kept thinking, I'm going to die here. I'm dying, and I've wasted my life. Then I kept thinking that plane, it's going somewhere. I could go back to the States. I could get out of here. But I didn't even have the energy to do that. And then one of my friends, we were in the Peace Corps together, was teaching English up in Laos, in Vientiane. Oh, he's got a nice flat and his own car, making money, and here I am, a skeleton with all these insects crawling in and out of my orifices, sick, lonely, and then they brought in a doctor, came in on horseback. There were no roads in. So he gave me some kind of injection. But then as I was lying there, one morning, I just, an inner voice, I heard this thing within me say, sit up and practice anapanasati. So here I'd been lying there, I'm so sick and lonely and feeling sorry for myself there. So I sat up and I started just doing anapanasati. And within a few days I was all right. So then that impressed me, because I did learn, you could see I had to go through all these miserable states and really suffer from them in order to see what I was actually doing, so, because I couldn't do anapanasati before, even though I should do it, but I'm just so weak, I can't even be mindful of my breath, and what's the point of it anyway, and then there's something in me just said, shut up and practice. So I did. And then from that point on, it was, I went back up to live on the top of the mountain, and it was getting near Vasa, Pansar, and my robes were in tatters, and I thought, and then I had this image of Luang Por Chah and the monks standing this morning train station, and I just couldn't get back to Wat Ba Pong fast enough. And then they didn't have a kuti for me. So they put me in one of the little sala. They had the first sala they ever built there. It was called the Little Sala, and so here I was in a little sala with about 3 or 4 other Thai monks. And they said, I don't know if we have a kuti, you'll probably have to stay here. And at that time I didn't care, I was just happy to get back. But I did learn, all my efforts, this sense of me trying to make things happen, and me, it was all that whole 6 months was just a kind of obsession with myself and my ideals of what I wanted. And that 6 months was probably the worst 6 months of my monastic life. So when I went back to Wat Ba Pong, I was more appreciative of Luang Por Chah and the whole lifestyle that we lived there. And so this is an example of willing to learn from suffering. And don't I found also attitude of wanting to, there's such a strong resistance to suffering, or wanting to get rid of suffering, that I developed a practice about welcoming suffering, because it's a kind of like a upaya where, I just want bliss and happiness, and then as you probably experienced it being Jawat, there's so much demand on you. People are, we've got to do this, and then we've got to go there, and then having this meeting, and then this and that, and then, oh no, not another thing. Oh God, no, not another complaint. No. And then, welcome. Complain all you want. And I found that helpful way of dealing with it, with my own tendency to not want that, to want something that where I feel safe and secure and everything's going well. And but sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. But also, this realm is like this. It's an irritating, frustrating experience from birth to death. So it's never going to be really what you want, but it's always going to be the way it is.